So it's good to see you all today. Thanks so much for being here, and welcome to the 2023 Begley Scholars presentation. I'm Mrs. MacDonald. I have the honor of being on the selection panel and running the Begley Scholars program, and being part of this day is one of my favorite things at BC High. So I just want to first say a big welcome to all of our families, friends, teachers, and of course all of you here in Gonzaga House, and especially to our leadership team. And I just am so thrilled that you guys all get to see the incredible work that our two scholars this year, Cam Dunn and Danny Moylan, have done. So as you know, like Ms. O'Donnell said, both this year and last year, both of our winners happen to hail from this illustrious house. I was on the panel with Mr. Suter, Ms. Carter, and Mr. McNamara, and I can tell you that it was not a setup. These guys are absolutely incredible, and their work is just, it's phenomenal. It was a really intense process, going through an interview, coming up with their research proposals, and I just am so excited for you to see what they worked on. So you're gonna hear from two incredibly talented, compassionate, and brilliant young men. But before we turn it over to them, I want to share a little bit with you about the Begley Scholars Program. It's something completely unique to BC High. It was born out of gratitude to Father John Begley, who is a Jesuit who taught here from 1956 to 1959. And he served for many years at the University of Scranton as well. Father Begley just passed away this past October. And out of gratitude for Father Begley's work at BC High, an anonymous family gifted this opportunity for students in his name, and we really thank the advancement team led by Ms. Gregorio for their ongoing work to support this program. Begley Scholars was originally launched to provide students with an opportunity for learning and growth beyond the classroom. The students are chosen as juniors, and they did this work through the summer and into their senior year. They were required to develop an academic research project that did a couple of things: exhibited their own intellectual and cultural curiosity, demonstrated a learning experience that went beyond the classroom, served their contemporaries, and aligned with the objectives of the grad. The two men before you today have worked on their projects diligently and with great care, as you'll see. They did not do this work alone, however. They both were assisted through the wise counsel of their mentors, who are faculty members. Ms. Teresa Collins of the English department and Mrs. Keenan Byrne of the Social Studies department. We're so grateful to them for mentoring Cam and Danny, and I'd like for them to stand up and be recognized for their work today. Now for the main event. Our 2023 Begley Scholars, as you know, are Cam Dunn and Danny Moylan. Cam and Danny both impressed the Begley selection panel with their passion for the topics they wanted to research, their commitment to social justice and the changing world around them, bringing a light to darkness that others may ignore. They both explored elements that were unique to their context, which, as you know, is the starting point of our pedagogy here at BC High. Cam's interest in his roots and his love of language helped his project take root. Danny's work at his local supermarket highlighted an area of need for people he encountered that he never would have known about and which troubled him deeply. Despite all of the other commitments in their lives, Cam and Danny approached this project with diligence and compassion, and they represent the best of who we are at BC High and what makes us special, our incredible student body. We're so proud of them both, and as you'll hear, their research has the power to change the world for the better. Please give them a huge round of applause and be patient as we get our technology set up. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Ms. MacDonald, for the really nice intro. I'm really excited to share with you guys some of the work that I've done on food insecurity over the last few months. So when we open, you guys are gonna see a map of the racial and ethnic breakdown of Boston. You'll be able to see in the center of Boston the neighborhoods of Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester. Those are the three neighborhoods that have the largest American population out of any of the neighborhoods in Boston. You'll also be able to see East Boston, which has the largest Latino population in Boston. As I mentioned before, this is a demographic map of Boston. You can see in the purple in the middle of Boston, those are the neighborhoods of Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan. And if you can see by the airport, that's East Boston, which is a predominantly Latino. On the next slide, you can see the access to grocery stores in Boston as well. If you look in the same neighborhoods in Roxbury, Mattapan, and Dorchester, you can see how it lines up almost perfectly with the demographics. Again, if you look in East Boston as well, you can see how the Latino population is underserviced with only one grocery store in the entire neighborhood. On the next slide, you can see these two next to each other. Just how striking it is to see how the supermarkets are concentrated so heavily in the predominantly white neighborhoods, and the minority neighborhoods are underserviced. So what is food insecurity? Simply, food insecurity is when a person lacks access to consistent, high-quality food that's readily available for consumption. You'll be able to see the classifications. The USDA has set up 4 different classifications for levels of food insecurity. The first one being high food security. This is when someone doesn't have any difficulty accessing food, they don't have any limitations on what they can purchase, and they don't worry about where the next meal can come from. When you get into marginal food security, a person experiencing marginal food security may have the occasional anxiety about where they get their next meal. They usually live paycheck to paycheck, but for the most part, their diet isn't majorly impacted. In low food security, you may be eating a perfect 3 meals a day, but your diet is severely impacted because the quality of the food has been sacrificed for the quantity. Finally, when you get down to very low food security, this is what most people think of when they hear food insecurity or hunger. This is when you have to ration out your food to make it stretch over a longer period of time, and your diet is regularly interrupted. So food insecurity is a very complex issue that there are a lot of causes, but some of the most commonly cited ones are living in a food desert. As you saw on the maps, there are major food deserts in much of Boston, and in rural areas outside of Boston, they're much more common as well. As the name implies, a food desert's an area that has little access to affordable and nutritious food, which forces families to choose lower quality and cheaper options instead of the high quality options that are available at supermarkets. Access to transportation falls under that and may be a contributing factor to living in a food desert. If you don't have access to transportation to get to a supermarket, you're not going to be eating from the supermarket. Illnesses and disabilities are very prevalent among the elderly. One of the things that a lot of people don't consider is that many people in the city walk to their grocery stores. The older you get, the less you can walk. Also, if you're dependent on a caretaker, as you grow older, your circle around you might grow smaller. The death of a loved one could really increase the effects that you feel as a result of food insecurity. Insufficient funding to local food banks also. As the need grows, these food pantries might not necessarily be getting all the resources they need. And in order to service as many people as possible, they might be rationing out food in the same way that someone that experiences food insecurity will be rationing out their own. All of these are symptoms of poverty. Poverty is the #1 leading cause, which may sound self-explanatory, of hunger. But as you saw on the maps, these minority areas are also the least wealthy in Boston. Health issues arise from poverty, and illnesses and disabilities are exacerbated by the health issues that hunger causes. It's a vicious cycle, and it's built on poverty. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of meals. This is a salad, looks pretty good. It takes a long time to make. You have to cut up all your vegetables. It's expensive, and it's not necessarily the most filling, although it is healthy. On the next slide, you'll see Big Mac meal. It's cheap, it's filling, they're everywhere. You can get a Big Mac on any corner in Boston, and it's very fast to eat. In reality, these are the choices that people that experience low and marginal levels of food security have to make on a daily basis. Childhood obesity has been very well known to be linked to adult diabetes, which is a very expensive disease that then, when you're in your adulthood, you're forced to make the choice between paying for your diabetes medicine or paying for food. If you choose the diabetes medicine and you don't have access to food, the symptoms of diabetes are prolonged. If you choose the food and don't access diabetes, you're not getting the insulin and you can be hospitalized, which is then very expensive. Again, built on the cycle of poverty, comes with it food insecurity. So who is most affected by food insecurity in Massachusetts? So you've all seen this map already, and it probably won't shock you to see that race is one of the largest contributing factors. You can see in this graph, it's a little bit difficult to see, 61% of Latino residents in Massachusetts experience food insecurity, and 50% of African Americans do. This is contrasted with just about a quarter of white and Asian Americans. In certain neighborhoods, black and white neighbors there might be 3 times more likely for the black neighbor to experience food insecurity when next to a white neighbor in the same area. Some of this can be attributed to the location of the supermarkets that I showed before, but again, a lot of it is due to poverty. You can see the different incomes over here, where Asian Americans make more than twice the average income of a Hispanic resident in Massachusetts, and this perfectly corresponds with the rates of food insecurity that are seen on the chart on the left. Another very surprising thing that I saw in my research was that gender is a huge contributing factor to food insecurity. The gender pay gap, although in Massachusetts is one of the best in the country, women still only make about 83 cents on the dollar. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but over the course of a year, that's thousands of dollars, and that can be the difference between eating dinner and not. In addition, there are a lot more single mothers than there are single fathers in Massachusetts. There are about 5 times as many single mothers. So when coupling that with the lower wages on average and more mouths to feed, it makes sense how you can see that food insecurity begins to form among women. This is a very shocking statistic, and I had to check it multiple times to make sure it was right, but it was. Feeding America reported that 85% of people that requested services were women in 2023. Finally, the largest contributing factor to if you'll be food insecure or not is if you are elderly. Adults over the retirement age are one of the most disproportionately affected demographics, and it's largely because of disability. You are 3 times more likely to experience a disability or chronic illness if you're above the retirement age when compared to someone in their 40s. In addition, people living on pensions or Social Security are receiving less money every month than they would if they were working a regular job, and that obviously contributes to the amount that they can buy in the supermarket. Social isolation, again, as I mentioned earlier, as you get older, your circle grows smaller. You're not able to go out and buy as much food as you maybe could if you had a caretaker with you. And high healthcare expenses, of course, as you have more disabilities, more chronic illnesses, the healthcare expenses are piled up. High out-of-pocket costs for medicine that people need to survive, again, are forcing them to choose between food and medicine in their lives. Some of the effects are very self-explanatory, but lower nutrition, you're not getting as many nutrients or vitamins as you would be if you were eating a balanced diet, which leads to poor health outcomes and mental health issues. So finally, the programs that are in place, the United States has the 2 largest programs to help with food insecurity are SNAP and WIC. So SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It was introduced in 1964, and about 10% of Americans use it every day. There's about a $30 maximum income that you can make to be eligible for SNAP, and you have to work about 30 hours a week. So you really need to be making very, very low income to qualify for this. You must be a legal immigrant, and you must be a resident of the United States for at least 5 years to qualify. WIC, on the other hand, was introduced in 1972. About 2% of Americans benefit from it. It does have more stringent requirements than SNAP. You must be either pregnant or have a child under the age of 5 years old, but you can make a little bit more money to qualify for WIC. You also must be a legal immigrant, and you must have lived in the United States for at least 5 years. So I want to see if you guys know what is covered under SNAP. Many people that receive SNAP benefits do not know what they can and cannot buy. So I'm going to give you a few examples, and I want to see by a show of hands if you think that this is qualified under SNAP. So if you think that organic gala apples, you can buy them with SNAP, please raise your hand. Okay, it's about half. If you don't, raise your hand. Okay, so you can buy organic gala apples under SNAP. Organic produce and regular produce, there's no difference. Although organic may be more expensive, it's proven to be more healthy. So SNAP gives you the option to buy organic if you want to. Next, dog food. If you think you can buy dog food, raise your hand. Okay, you don't think you can buy dog food? Yes, you cannot buy dog food under SNAP. Unfortunately, to your pets, you can't feed them with your nutrition assistance program. Next, vitamins. Do you think you can buy vitamins under SNAP? Raise your hand. Okay, majority. You don't think you can buy vitamins? Okay, yes, you cannot buy vitamins under SNAP. Medication and vitamins are not qualified under the Supplementary Nutrition Assistance Program. Starbucks Frappuccino, you know and love it. Do you think you can buy it with Snap? Raise your hand. Vast majority says no, but you actually can. You can buy cold drinks with your Snap card. Finally, we are going to go to the Whole Foods Hot Bar. If you think you can buy food from the hot bar, raise your hand. All right? You actually cannot buy pre-prepared foods under SNAP. So the reason why I bring this up is that there are some huge discrepancies between what people think they can buy and what they actually can buy under SNAP. I already mentioned vitamins, medicines, prepared foods, and dog foods as things you cannot buy under SNAP. In addition, you can't buy alcohol or tobacco. You can't buy any food item that you can consume in store or hygiene or paper products. With WIC, the requirements are more stringent. Even though it's for women, infants, and children, you can't buy any diapers or hygiene products. There are only certain organic foods that qualify to be purchased. The rest of them you would not be able to buy. And again, medicine, supplements, and vitamins, none of those are included under your WIC benefits. So lastly, for my project, I created a website where you'd be able to view all the information that I shared in much more detail. I just wanted to wrap up. If you want, you can find the website. We're not going to be displaying it, I don't think. But if you want to pull it up on your iPad or anything, I highly recommend checking it out. A lot of hours were poured into it. We met with experts at the Greater Boston Food Bank and in the office of Jim McGovern, so we have a lot of really good sources on there if you want to look into this. Thank you all so much for your attention. I want to give a special thanks to Mrs. Keenan Byrne for all the work that you did keeping me on track, Mrs. McDonald and the select committee, and although they're not here, everyone who helped me in the Greater Boston Food Bank. Thank you all so much.
So for my Begley project, I looked at Gaelic and I used it as a vehicle to study endangered languages. So for a little inspiration behind this project, it's a bit grainy right now, but that is Ireland, Scotland, and England. So my inspiration for this project came from my family. My grandparents came from Ireland and Scotland, respectively. My grandfather came from a small town in County Waterford called Aglish, and my grandmother came from a small island off the coast of the tip of Scotland called the Isle of Lewis. Each of them had to pass Gaelic proficiency exams to graduate from high school, and whenever I visit either my grandfather or grandmother's relatives, Gaelic is sort of infused into our language all the time. Whenever we're speaking, whenever we're playing card games, it's all surrounding our lives. So for a little history of Gaelic, it was a combination of Celtic languages, and it's pretty old. It appeared first in 500 BC. It was brought to Ireland by the Gaels. These were a Nordic people, so it actually has its origins in the Nordic countries. And the earliest writing system is something called Ogham. And it is written on stones using a 20-letter alphabet. You can't really see it, but there's sort of slashes in these stones, and that's how it takes form. So UNESCO has published an atlas of the world's languages in danger, and it ranges, it falls under 5 categories, falling from vulnerable to extinct, and Gaelic actually falls under the definitely endangered category, which is extremely concerning. It means that children no longer learn the language as a mother tongue in the home, which is really difficult because it's impossible to perpetuate a language if you're not able to practice it at home and in the family setting. So some of the factors that have led to Gaelic's decline over time. In the 1600s, British law required the use of English, meaning that Gaelic was somewhat illegal, making it just very difficult to perpetuate. English migrants started to settle on plantations in Ireland, and this is really where the political and economic power started to rest in the English speakers. Those in government and those with most of the wealth were the ones speaking English, so English really equaled success during this time. From 1831 to the late only Anglican schools were allowed. So this really ruled out the main way that Gaelic was spoken in society. School children would go every day to learn Gaelic in the classroom, but with the ban on teaching Gaelic, only English was taught. And these two images on the right here, they are head schools, and these were secret, illegal schools where kids would learn, and they were actually taught through Gaelic. So that was one of the sort of the revolutionary or rebellious ways that people were still trying to continue speaking Gaelic during this time. So the Great Famine had a huge impact on Gaelic. It lasted from 1845 to 1849, and it significantly thinned the Irish-speaking population. Irish during this time started to be seen as the language of the working poor. I mentioned before that English was spoken by plantation owners, so it actually meant that only the people doing the laborious tasks or laborious tasks on the fields were the ones speaking Gaelic. So it was really seen as a language with a lack of wealth. I thought that a quote that really summed this up was 1 in 4 people died during the famine, another immigrated, and the spirit of the two left behind was broken. This just really shows that the soul of the culture was really lost during the Great Famine, that last part. So the Gaelic Revival, this was a period from the end of the 19th to the beginning of the 20th century, and this was really a renaissance of the Gaelic language. It was beginning to thrive once again. There were organizations being formed, like the Society for the Preservation of the Irish Language, the Gaelic League, and the Gaelic Athletic Association. Not only was it a revival in the sense that language was being used more and more, but it was also used in government, which is extremely important because now the things that are predicting the way that society works is using the Gaelic language. This is a poster on the right from the Gaelic League in 1913. It was actually promoting Irish Language Week, so this was just one of the things that the Gaelic League was doing to revive Gaelic. Some governmental attempts to revitalize Irish. In 1878, Irish was introduced in school programs. I mentioned earlier that teaching Gaelic in schools was banned up until this point, so that was very important. In 1904, the implementation of the bilingual education. This allowed teachers to start teaching in Gaelic as well. Not only were kids learning Gaelic, but they were also being taught coursework in Gaelic. In 1921, the Irish Free State was founded. This allowed more freedom with new laws to help revitalize Gaelic. In 1937, the Irish Constitution stated that Gaelic was the first official language, with English the second, and this really cemented Gaelic as the language of government. In 1938, Irish was taught in infant classrooms and is a prerequisite for national universities. I mentioned earlier that my grandparents had to take Irish proficiency exams, and that is just an example of that. In 1970 to the present, there is something called All Irish Schools. And these are schools where only Irish is taught, and today over 40,000 students actually attend these schools. So this is an example of how Gaelic is present in the modern day in Ireland. This is called the Gaeltacht, and these are regions where Irish is mainly spoken. And they were established in the 1920s during the founding of the Irish Free State. They are examples of Irish as a living language. Only Gaelic is spoken in these regions. You only hear it. You hear it all. It's the only language in stores. It's the only language on street signs. It's everywhere. And a quote that I thought tied to this was, "A language can have no real life unless it lives in the lives of the people." The Gaeltacht are examples of regions where it is a living language. It's used every day. So that isn't to say, though, that the Irish language is not in jeopardy. In the 2022 census, 40% of the population spoke spoke Gaelic. Only 10% out of those 1.8 million were fluent in it, and half of that 180,000, 72,000 speak it on a daily basis outside of school. So really, it's an extreme jeopardy right now. Not many people are using it outside the school setting, and yeah, it just demonstrates how popular English is compared to Ireland in Ireland. These are some implementations of technology to understand Irish. This was actually a study performed a couple years ago at the University of Glasgow, and it used ultrasound to understand tongue movement in Gaelic. Some other ways that we can use technology to understand Gaelic is Rosetta Stone, Duolingo, virtual tutoring via Zoom. These are all great ways that we have access to now to learn Gaelic. So for my Begley project, I spent the entire summer taking introductory Gaelic lessons over Zoom with a tutor from Connemara. Connemara is actually a town within one of the Gaeltacht regions that I mentioned earlier, and through this I learned the basic sentence structure of the language, the alphabet, and common idioms and sayings. This was really helpful as it gave me sort of a foundation for using Gaelic in the future. One of the quotes that I learned from my tutor was Níl an tintian mar do tintian fen. And this actually means there's no fireplace like your own. I thought this is pretty similar to there's no place like home, and I thought it was just interesting how English and Gaelic are connected in those ways. So the overarching theme of the project that I was trying to get at was what can teens do to revive endangered languages? And I actually wrote 2 articles, one in the Teen Speak section of the Boston Globe, and a longer one in the Boston Irish Reporter. And it's really about how teenagers can engage with the languages of their ancestors. I wanted to leave you off with a quote by Wade Davis. He's an archaeologist from Canada, and it says, "Language is a flash of the human spirit, the vehicle by which the soul of a particular culture comes into the material world." This really just shows how much our language is connected to not only our culture, but also our identity. To perpetuate Irish and other endangered languages, we really have to emphasize them as living languages, using them in daily life, whether that be in the home, whether that be in school, and that's really the only way that we perpetuate their existence. Thank you. I lastly wanted to thank Ms. McDonald, Ms. Collins, especially, and the Begley Fund for funding this research.